Morning, it's March 30th, 2026. The second night of the Mayhem Ball. Tonight, Lady Gaga's in town. I'm in Boston. So today I just wanted to talk about turn the other cheek. So Jesus said, if somebody strikes you, turn the other cheek. And that has been interpreted as being an advocation of pacifism in the past, and then other people say, well, it's contextual pacifism, and you have to use your knowledge of good and evil to determine when to be a pacifist and when to fight back and all this other stuff. But it's actually very, very clear, and you should not be using your own knowledge to determine this stuff. You should be using what Jesus said. So in another place in the Bible, Jesus is asked what is the greatest commandment, and he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. He says strength in two of the places that he's quoted as saying this, and once he isn't. Anyway, and then he says, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. So he says, love your neighbor as yourself. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. He doesn't say love everybody as yourself. He says love your neighbor as yourself. Now you can sit there and try and determine, well, what does he mean by neighbor? How far away does someone have to be from me to be my neighbor? But you don't have to do that, because he is asked in a different place in the Bible, who is your neighbor? And he defines neighbor. He tells a parable of the Good Samaritan, which involves a Samaritan helping a man who was beaten by robbers. And at the end of it, he asks his audience, he asks the person who asked him, who is your neighbor? He says, okay, so which one of these people was his neighbor? And the response from the audience member is, the one who shows him mercy. And so, and Jesus says, you're correct. Go and do likewise. So, to backtrack a little bit, Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, not everyone as yourself. Then he's asked, who is your neighbor? And he defines your neighbor as the one who shows you mercy. Now let's go back to turn the other cheek. You are confronted by someone. It could be in the context of an argument, or it could be just out of the blue, or there could be a lot of ways it could happen, but somebody smacks you in the face. All right, you have an option. You could run away and protect yourself. You could, turtle or get some authorities to help you, to help protect you. You could fight back and, either get your ass kicked or kick their ass or something. But Jesus says to do none of those things. He says, turn the other cheek. Let them hit you again. Give them an opportunity to hit you again. When someone smacks you in the face and then you turn the other cheek, you are giving someone who has committed an act that hurts you the opportunity to show whether they are merciless or not. When someone smacks you in the face, turn the other cheek. It's not about being a pacifist. It's not about putting up with injustice or unfairness. It's about learning what you got in front of you. Is this a human being? Is this my neighbor? Is this someone who shows mercy? Or is it a merciless, fucking ruthless, unwanted enemy of mine? Because the fact of the matter is, Jesus is very clear, he has enemies. He is clear throughout the Gospels. And you learn who your enemies are when you give them an opportunity to show mercy and they do not show mercy. So someone smacks you in the face, turn the other cheek. Not because you are weak and don't want to fight back, not because you should tolerate injustice, but it's a learning mechanism. You learn whether you have an opponent in front of you or a friend who just made a mistake. When Jesus says, talks about forgiveness, he talks about forgiving many, many times. He uses numbers. But he doesn't say forgive. He could have said forgive everything all the time. I'm not even going to say what numbers he uses, but he's asked about forgiveness, and he says, how often should I forgive? And he doesn't say forgive everything all the time. He doesn't say that. He could have said that. It would have been clear. Just as he could have said love everyone as yourself instead of love your neighbor as yourself. Instead of saying forgive everything all the time, always forgive, he could have just said always forgive. It would have been a very short verse. It would have been like Jesus wept. But he didn't. He said forgive, and then he gave some numbers. Again, I'm not going to give the numbers because it's not important in the context of this video what those numbers are. What is important is that it is not an infinite number of times. So the default is to forgive. You forgive an implausibly large number of times. You forgive and you forgive and you forgive, but if there is a limit, Jesus said, please understand, I have come not to bring peace but a sword. You can imagine he's talking in the context of whatever's going on at the time around him. The idea is that a cross which brings death, brings someone resting in peace, but it can be flipped upside down into a sword. If you flip a cross upside down, it's a sword. You've got to decide which is appropriate at any given time. So when Jesus says, I come not to bring peace but a sword, basically somebody does something, you test them out, you give them a chance to show mercy. If they don't, you flip the cross. Just as you flip the tables in the temple. When you have someone who's selling doves, money changers, violating the sanctity, the divineness of the temple, you flip it upside down in the same way you would flip up a cross and turn it into a sword. It's about, the fact of the matter is, it almost comes down to as simple as there are two types of people, or there is one type of people and then there's something else that looks like people, is what it really comes down to. And you have to, the only way you can tell and be fair and just in assigning someone to the second category, the latter category, the not human category, Homo sapien but not human, is you have to give them a chance to show mercy. And really, when he says forgive many, many, many times, you have to give them lots of chances. Okay, here's another chance. Are you ruthless? Are you really that? Okay, gives another chance. Here's another chance. There's another chance. And it has to be demonstrated and proven that they are incapable of showing mercy. And then you go from Santa to Satan. That's just how it is. And it's not out of vindictiveness or revenge, but those feelings of wanting revenge for unfairness are a tool that you can use to make a correction, because the simple fact of the matter is tolerating injustice to yourself is exactly the same as tolerating injustice to your neighbor. If you let someone infinitely persecute you, do things that should not be done to another human, to any human, you are tacitly acknowledging that other people can be subjected to the same treatment. You are providing a bad example in that way, and you are also feeding into the idea that it's okay for both the potential victims of such treatment and the potential perpetrators of such treatment. So again, it's a very quick flip. Cross becomes sword. The tables flip over. You default to forgiveness and to an assumption. You see something that looks like a Homo sapien, right away you say, that's my neighbor, maybe. And then if something happens and something unpleasant happens and they hurt you, you give them a chance to show mercy, and you really might need to give them a chance to give them many chances to do it. But there does come a point when you have demonstrated that they are not merciless, and then they are no longer a neighbor, and then they fall outside that greatest commandment, and it is counterproductive and wrong and incorrect to love them from that point on. It simply is not. It doesn't lead to good results. And by love, there's a sense in which you could, no, I used to say that. I changed my mind on that. It's incorrect. They're not human in the same sense, their internal experience is so different from the internal experience of people who empathize and sympathize and pity and really try and share the experience of people in suffering. Their internal experience is so different that they are deserving of entirely different treatment. Entirely different treatment. If you can imagine a cartoon with thought bubbles, humans walking around would have like heart-shaped thought bubbles. These people are walking around with like something like a swastika over their head. It's like, if you think about a swastika, it's like a squashed, mutant, retard, useless insect that couldn't do anything other than make things unpleasant for people. And so you have human beings walking around with hearts, and that's where their thoughts are being recorded in their head. If this was a video game, and you could see the thoughts of everyone around you, and that's the vast majority of people. But there are these other fucking mutant retard insects with it's like, think about a swastika. That's their viewpoint. A swastika there's 6 lines in a swastika, just as in the I Ching. There are 6 lines in a hexagram. All 6 of them are masculine. None of them are broken lines. But instead of being a hexagram and kind of being in accord with the natural way as defined by Taoism and discussed in Taoism, it's been taken and twisted and gnarled up into this mutant, retard, useless insect thing. And that's what's in their minds. It is not like other humans. You can't find it in there. It isn't in there. And we have that's people like this have always existed, but because of the information age and various other trends, we've gotten to a point where the gap between an actual human and a Homo sapien insect spoofing human behavior is wider than it's ever been, and it's untenable, which is why we're doing what we're doing. But anyway, that's the idea behind Turn the Other Cheek. You turn it to show, you turn it to give them an opportunity to show mercy, and you only love those who are merciful as yourself. You only love your neighbors as yourself. Just as wherever you might live, not everyone is your neighbor. At some point, someone's far enough away from you that they're no longer your neighbor. You can argue, well, yeah, my next door neighbor, I got my neighbor behind me, I got my neighbor across the street, maybe my neighborhood, you could say, is my neighbor, maybe everybody in my town is my neighbor. Then maybe there are neighboring municipalities, depending upon how expansive you want to be with the definition of neighbor. You could go pretty far, but there is a point at which the quantitative change in the physical distance between you and where you live and somebody else becomes a qualitative change. They are no longer a neighbor of yours, and there are those of us among us who are no longer neighbors, and it is for them that the sword is required, the cross becoming the sword.